Think about how you treat my brother, she said. My name's Stuart. I'm 37 years old and I work as a supervisor at Thornbrae Systems in Columbus, Ohio. That night, lying on my own couch with my clothes dumped beside me like garbage, I did exactly what my wife Carmen asked. I thought about how I treated Marcus. I thought about how I'd been paying his phone bill for 8 months, how I'd bought him groceries every week without a single thank you, how he left dishes in the sink for days expecting me to clean them, how he borrowed my tools and never returned them, how he used my truck without asking, bringing it back with an empty gas tank. Marcus had been living with us for a year and 3 months, not visiting, living. My spare bedroom had become his permanent residence, complete with his gaming setup, his clothes scattered everywhere, and his attitude that I owed him something. The conversation that landed me on the couch had been simple enough. I'd sat down with Carmen and Marcus after dinner, pulled out our monthly budget, and explained that money was getting tight. My company had cut overtime, and Carmen's part-time job at the local clinic wasn't covering the extra expenses Marcus brought. We need to figure out a plan, I'd said, looking directly at Marcus. Either you start contributing to utilities and groceries, or we need to discuss other arrangements. Marcus had laughed. Actually laughed. Other arrangements? This is family, Stuart. You don't charge family. Carmen had jumped in immediately. Stuart, that's completely unreasonable. Marcus is going through a rough patch. The rough patch had lasted over a year. Marcus had been looking for work since he moved in, but somehow never quite found anything that met his standards. Too early, too far, not enough pay, wrong type of work. Always an excuse. I'd watched my savings account shrink month by month. Watched Carmen make excuses for behavior she'd never tolerate from anyone else. Watched my own home become a place where I felt like an unwelcome guest. That night on the couch, staring at the ceiling, something shifted inside me. It wasn't anger exactly, more like clarity. I'd been so focused on keeping the peace, on being the understanding husband, that I'd forgotten what it felt like to have my own boundaries respected. Carmen's words echoed in my head. Think about how you treat my brother. I had treated him like family. I'd given him a roof, food, and patience he didn't deserve. And somehow, that made me the villain in this story. The house was quiet except for the sound of Marcus's television upstairs. My television in my house paid for with my money. I closed my eyes and started making a plan. Carmen and I had been married for 6 years. We'd bought this house together 4 years ago, a modest 3-bedroom place on the east side of Columbus. It wasn't much, but it was ours. Or at least, it had been. Marcus showed up in January of the previous year. Carmen's younger brother, 29 years old and fresh off what she called a bad breakup. He'd been living with his girlfriend in Cleveland, but things went south, and suddenly he needed a place to stay. Just for a few weeks, Carmen had promised, until he gets back on his feet. I'd agreed because that's what you do for family. You help when people need it. My own brother had crashed at my place years earlier when his marriage fell apart. The difference was, Jacob had found an apartment within 6 weeks and paid for groceries the entire time he stayed. Marcus was different. He moved in like he'd been invited to a permanent vacation. The first month, I'd figured he was still adjusting. By the 3rd month, I'd started dropping hints about job hunting. By the 6th month, I'd begun having direct conversations about timelines. Carmen always had an excuse ready. The job market was tough. Marcus was dealing with depression. He'd just started applying for this really promising position. He needed time to figure out his next step. Meanwhile, my grocery bill had doubled. Our utility costs shot up from someone being home all day with the heat cranked and every electronic device running. My truck developed mysterious new scratches and dings. Tools disappeared from my garage. The breaking point conversations had started 3 months ago. Small ones at first. Me mentioning to Carmen that maybe Marcus could help with the electric bill. Her explaining that he was family and I was being petty. Me suggesting he might contribute to household chores. Her reminding me that he was going through a difficult time. Last month I'd tried a different approach. I'd sat down with Marcus directly, man to man. Explained that I wasn't trying to kick him out, but we needed to establish some ground rules about expenses and responsibilities. He'd nodded along, agreed completely, then changed nothing. 2 weeks ago, I'd discovered he'd been ordering takeout on my credit card. When I confronted him, he'd claimed it was a misunderstanding. When I asked Carmen about it, she'd said I was overreacting to an honest mistake. That's when I'd started noticing other things. How Carmen's tone changed whenever I brought up Marcus. How she'd started treating my concerns like character flaws. How she'd begun making me feel guilty for wanting basic respect in my own home. The warning signs had been there for months. I'd just been too busy trying to be the good guy to see them clearly. The realization hit me around 3 a.m., lying on that couch with a thin blanket and a throw pillow that smelled like Marcus's cologne. This wasn't about money. It wasn't about chores or respect or even Marcus's freeloading. This was about the fact that my wife had chosen her brother over me, and I'd been too busy trying to fix things to see it. Carmen had thrown my clothes on the couch like I was a stranger who'd overstayed his welcome. In my own house, because I'd asked her brother to contribute financially or make other living arrangements. I thought about the last year and 3 months. Really thought about it. Every conversation where Carmen had dismissed my concerns. Every time she'd made me feel selfish for wanting my own space back. Every instance where she'd treated Marcus's comfort as more important than our marriage. The pattern was clear once I stopped making excuses for it. Carmen had made her choice long ago. She'd just never bothered to tell me. I sat up on the couch and looked around the living room. My furniture, my television, my house. But somehow, I was the one sleeping on the couch because I'd suggested that a grown man should pay his own way. The anger came slowly, like a tide rolling in. Not the explosive kind that makes you slam doors and yell. The quiet kind that burns steady and changes everything. I walked into the kitchen and made coffee at 3:30 a.m., sat at the table where I'd tried to have that reasonable conversation about the budget just hours earlier. The table where Marcus had laughed at the idea of contributing to his own living expenses. That's when I understood what needed to happen. I wasn't going to fight about this anymore. I wasn't going to have another conversation about fairness or respect or boundaries. I wasn't going to try to convince Carmen that her husband's feelings mattered as much as her brother's convenience. I was done. The decision settled into my chest like something that had always been there, waiting for me to notice it. I wasn't angry at Carmen anymore. I wasn't frustrated with Marcus. I was just finished with a situation that had no solution as long as I was the only one trying to solve it. I finished my coffee and went back to the couch, but I didn't try to sleep. Instead, I started making a mental list of everything I needed to do. First, I'd call my boss and take a personal day. Then I'd start looking for an apartment. Something small, something mine. Somewhere I could drink coffee at my own kitchen table without feeling like an intruder. The sun was coming up when I finally closed my eyes. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Carmen found me drinking coffee in the kitchen the next morning. She was already dressed for work, moving around like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't banished her husband to the couch the night before. "You left the coffee maker on all night," she said, not looking at me. "I made fresh coffee at 3:30. She paused, finally meeting my eyes. "Stuart, about last night. I've been thinking about what you said, about how I treat Marcus." Her expression softened. She probably thought I was going to apologize. "Good, because he's family, and family doesn't..." "I'm taking a personal day today. We need to have a real conversation about this situation." The softness disappeared. What kind of conversation? The kind where we figure out if this marriage is still working for both of us. Carmen set down her coffee mug hard enough to splash liquid onto the counter. "Are you seriously threatening divorce because I defended my brother?" "I'm not threatening anything. I'm trying to understand why asking a grown man to contribute to his own living expenses makes me the villain in this house. Because you knew he was going through a rough time when he moved in. You agreed to help him. For a few weeks, it's been over a year, Carmen. He's not even looking for work anymore." She turned away from me, grabbing paper towels to clean up the spilled coffee. "He's been applying to places. The job market is terrible right now. When was the last time he went on an interview?" Silence. When was the last time he even filled out an application? More silence. Carmen. He ordered $200 worth of food on my credit card last month. When I asked him about it, he said it was a mistake. When I asked you, you said I was overreacting. It was a mistake. He's been using my truck without permission for months. Yesterday I found out he borrowed $500 from your cousin Danny and never paid it back. How is any of this my fault for bringing it up? Carmen finished cleaning the counter and turned back to me. Her face had that set expression I'd learned to recognize, the one that meant she'd already made up her mind and wasn't interested in hearing alternatives. Marcus is going through the worst time of his life. His girlfriend left him, he lost his apartment, he's struggling with depression, and instead of supporting him like family should, you're nickeling and diming him over groceries and utilities. I'm not nickeling and diming anyone. I'm asking for basic respect and responsibility. From someone who's barely holding it together. Carmen, he's not barely holding it together. He's playing video games 12 hours a day and ordering takeout on my credit card. That's not depression. That's taking advantage. Her voice went cold. So what are you saying? That we should kick him out? Put him on the street? I'm saying we should treat him like an adult who's capable of taking care of himself, with a timeline and expectations. You want me to choose between you and my brother? The words hung in the air between us. She'd said it like an accusation, but she was right. That's exactly what I wanted, because that's exactly what the situation had become. Yeah, I said quietly. I guess I do. Carmen stared at me for a long moment. Then she picked up her purse and headed for the door. I'm going to work. When I get home tonight, I expect you to have figured out how to be more supportive of my family. The door closed behind her with a sharp click. I sat there in the empty kitchen, listening to the sound of her car pulling out of the driveway. Then I heard Marcus's alarm clock going off upstairs, followed by the sound of him hitting snooze. For the third time. I spent the morning going through our financial records, bank statements, credit card bills, utility payments. I'd been tracking the numbers in my head for months, but seeing them laid out on paper made the situation crystal clear. Our monthly expenses had increased by 63% since Marcus moved in. Not just from an extra person in the house, but from someone who consumed resources like he was trying to set a record. The electric bill alone had doubled. Our grocery costs had gone from $200 a month to over $400. But the real discovery came when I started digging deeper into our joint account activity. 3 months ago, Carmen had withdrawn $800 in cash. When I'd asked about it at the time, she'd said it was for a coworker's baby shower gift and some other expenses she couldn't remember. I'd accepted the explanation because $800 wasn't going to break us, and I trusted my wife. 2 months ago, another $600. This time she'd said it was for car repairs that the shop had wanted in cash for some reason. Last month, $500. She'd mentioned something about helping a friend, but she'd been vague about the details. I pulled up our online banking and went back further. The pattern was there, going back almost to when Marcus first moved in. Small withdrawals here and there, always with reasonable explanations, always in amounts that wouldn't trigger a big conversation. Marcus wasn't just not contributing to the household. Carmen had been giving him money. Our money. Money she'd been taking from our joint account and handing over to her brother without telling me. I sat back in my desk chair and stared at the computer screen. The betrayal wasn't just about choosing Marcus over me. It was about lying to me while she did it. I thought about all the conversations we'd had about money being tight, how I'd been picking up extra shifts when I could find them, how I'd been putting off replacing my work boots because we needed to watch our spending, how I'd been feeling guilty about every small purchase while Carmen was secretly funding her brother's lifestyle. The phone rang. Carmen's name on the caller ID. I've been thinking about this morning, she said when I answered. I think we both said things we didn't mean. Did we? Stuart, I know this situation isn't ideal, but Marcus really is struggling and he's family. I need you to understand that. How much money have you given him? Silence. Carmen, how much money have you given Marcus from our joint account? I don't know what you're talking about. I'm looking at our bank statements right now. Cash withdrawals going back over a year. Always with explanations that didn't quite add up. More silence. Jesus Christ, Carmen, how much? It's not what you think. How much? Her voice was barely a whisper. Maybe 3,000. Over the whole time he's been here. $3,000. On top of all the food, utilities, and everything else I'd been paying for. $3,000 she'd given to her brother while telling me we needed to tighten our belts. Stuart, he needed help. Real help, not just a place to stay. So you decided to help him with our money without telling me. I knew you'd say no. You're damn right I would have said no. Because we're married, Carmen. We're supposed to make financial decisions together. I was trying to help my family. I thought I was your family too. The line went quiet except for the sound of her breathing. I'll be home around 6, she said finally. We need to talk about this properly. She hung up before I could respond. I didn't wait until 6. After Carmen hung up, I called 3 apartment complexes on the north side of Columbus. The first one had a 1-bedroom available immediately. The second had a waiting list. The third could show me something that afternoon. I drove to Copperfield Gardens at 2 p.m. and walked through a small 1-bedroom apartment with hardwood floors and a kitchen that looked out onto a courtyard. It was quiet. It was clean. It was mine if I wanted it. I'll take it, I told the property manager. Don't you want to think about it? Talk it over with your wife? No. I signed the lease and paid the deposit with money from my personal checking account. The account Carmen didn't have access to. The one I'd been putting a small amount into each month since we'd gotten married, thinking of it as emergency money. This qualified as an emergency. By 4 p.m. I was back home loading my truck. Not everything. Just the essentials. Clothes, my tools, my laptop, a few pieces of furniture that had been mine before the marriage. I worked methodically, like I was completing a project at work. Marcus wandered downstairs around 4:30, probably looking for something to eat. Moving furniture around, he asked, watching me carry a dresser past the living room. Something like that. Need help? The offer was so absurd I almost laughed. Marcus volunteering to help with physical labor. No thanks. He shrugged and went into the kitchen. I heard the refrigerator open and close, then the sound of the microwave starting up. I made 3 trips to the apartment, bringing over the basics. On the 3rd trip, I stopped at an office supply store and bought a small package of note cards. I wrote a simple message on one of them. Carmen, I'm done being treated like an intruder in my own home. I'm done having my concerns dismissed and my boundaries ignored. I'm done being lied to about money. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. Don't contact me until you're ready to have an honest conversation about what happened here. Stuart, I left the note on the kitchen counter, propped against the coffee maker, right where she'd see it when she got home. Then I walked through the house one more time. Not out of sentiment, but to make sure I hadn't forgotten anything important. The place already felt different, like a hotel I'd checked out of but hadn't quite left yet. I was loading the last box into my truck when my neighbor Teresa came over. She was an older woman, maybe 70, who'd lived next door since before Carmen and I had bought the house. Everything okay, Stuart? Just making some changes. She looked at the truck, then back at me. Teresa wasn't stupid. She'd probably heard some of the arguments over the past few months. You know where to find me if you need anything, she said. Thanks, Teresa. Take care of yourself. I drove to the apartment and unloaded everything in one trip. It didn't take long. Amazing how little you actually need when you strip away all the complications. By 6:30 p.m., I was sitting in my new kitchen with a beer and a sandwich, looking out at the courtyard. No television upstairs, no dishes in the sink that weren't mine, no one borrowing my things or spending my money or making me feel guilty for wanting basic respect. My phone had been buzzing for the past hour. Text messages from Carmen. I turned it off without reading them. For the first time in over a year, I was home. 3 days later, Carmen showed up at my apartment. I opened the door to find her standing in the hallway with red eyes and a desperate expression. She'd been crying, probably for hours. Stuart, please, we need to talk. We can talk, right here. Can I come in? No. She took a shaky breath. Marcus is gone. Good for Marcus. You don't understand. He left yesterday, packed his stuff and disappeared. No note, No explanation, just gone. I leaned against the doorframe and waited for her to continue. I can't afford the house payments without your income. I called the mortgage company, and they said I have 30 days to bring the payment current or they'll start foreclosure proceedings. That's unfortunate. Stuart, I know I messed up. I know I should have told you about the money, but we can fix this. We can work through it. How much money did you give him, Carmen? The real number. Her voice cracked. About $5,000. Total. $5,000. Not $3,000 like she'd admitted on the phone. $5,000 of our money, handed over to her brother while she told me we needed to cut back on expenses. He took it all when he left, she continued. Everything I'd given him, plus he emptied my jewelry box. My grandmother's ring, the necklace you gave me for our anniversary. Everything. The irony was perfect. Marcus had finally shown Carmen exactly who he was, but only after she'd destroyed her marriage to protect him. I'm sorry that happened to you. Stuart, please. I'll do anything. I'll go to counseling. I'll make it up to you. Just come home. I am home. You know what I mean. I looked at this woman I'd been married to for 6 years. She was asking me to fix a problem she'd created by lying to me and choosing her brother over our marriage. She wanted me to come back and rescue her from the consequences of her own decisions. No. What do you mean, no? I mean no, Carmen. I'm not coming back. I'm not fixing this. You made your choice when you threw my clothes on the couch for asking your brother to be a responsible adult. You made your choice when you started lying to me about money. And Marcus made his choice when he stole from you and disappeared. But I love you. If you loved me, you wouldn't have treated me like the problem for over a year. She started crying harder. Please don't do this. Please don't leave me. I already left. 3 days ago. 6 months later, I ran into Carmen's cousin Danny at a hardware store in Reynoldsburg. Hey Stuart, how have you been? Good, Danny, you? Can't complain. He paused, clearly debating whether to bring up the obvious topic. I heard about you and Carmen. Yeah, for what it's worth, I never understood why she put up with Marcus's garbage for so long. Guy was a professional mooch. You hear from him lately? Danny shook his head. Not since he disappeared. Carmen asked around, trying to find him. Turns out he'd been borrowing money from half the family and never paying anyone back. My wife told me he owed her sister $800 from 2 years ago. The picture kept getting clearer, even months later. Marcus hadn't just been taking advantage of Carmen and me. He'd been working his way through the entire family, one generous relative at a time. How's Carmen doing? Lost the house last month. She's renting a room from her friend Julie now. Works 2 jobs just to pay for that. Danny looked uncomfortable. She asks about you sometimes, whether anyone's heard from you. I'm doing fine, got my own place, picked up some freelance work on weekends. Life's good. And it was good, better than it had been in years. I'd learned to cook for myself again, made friends with my neighbors, started taking evening walks without wondering what crisis would be waiting for me when I got home. Carmen had lost her house, her brother, and her marriage because she'd chosen to enable someone who didn't deserve it. Marcus had burned through his welcome with everyone who'd tried to help him, leaving a trail of debt and broken trust. Me? I'd learned that sometimes walking away is the only way to save yourself. Some lessons cost more than others, but they're always worth it in the end.